Hi, my name is Miriam Lauba, and I am the senior producer for the Play On podcast series for Next Chapter Podcasts. Today, for our delightful bonus content, we have our fool, or I should say the gentleman who played the fool for us in Marcus Gardley's translation of King Lear, Mr. Aldo Billingslea. Hey, Aldo.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Miriam. Thanks for talking to me about this fabulous thing.
I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you before we go much further. Okay. So, Aldo is a professor of theater at Santa Clara University, where he teaches courses in performance and performance studies, including seminars on August Wilson and American theater from the Black perspective. Aldo became SCU's inaugural Associate Provost for Diversity and Inclusion and served as the Vice President of the 100 Black Men of Silicon Valley. A member of Actors Equity and the Screen Actors Guild, Aldo has also appeared in 8 of the 10 plays in August Wilson's Century Cycle, chronicling African American history of the 20th century, and more than 24 different plays by William Shakespeare. Aldo has worked extensively in theaters in the San Francisco Bay Area, including the American Conservatory Theater, the Aurora Theater, the Cutting Ball Theater, the Lorraine Hansberry Theater, the Magic Theater, the Marin Theater Company, and TheaterWorks. He has also worked at many regional theaters across the country, as well as many Shakespeare festivals across the country, including the Shakespeare Festivals of California, Dallas, Marin, Santa Cruz, Utah, and Oregon. And I can say, when we found ourselves working together earlier in our careers, Aldo was one of the most generous and thoughtful actors. He always had a kind word of encouragement for me as a novice. So it is my great pleasure to have him here with me today. Aldo, welcome to the Play On Podcast bonus content series for King Lear.
Thanks so much, Miriam, and I am so sorry that you are so tired of talking now after saying all those things, but you made up some wonderful things about me, and I appreciate it.
They're all such amazing things, but we're going to start at the beginning, Aldo. Can you just say where you were born?
I was born in San Bernardino, California, where I lived for just a few months before we moved out because my dad was in the military. So I have 2 older brothers, an older sister, and I have a twin brother. And so, so my mom had twins, and then we're on the move again. And shortly after, the family was in Istanbul, Turkey. And so we spent a couple of years there, and our best friends were twins named Bidad and Gidad, which I have this fantasy that one day we're all going to be able to get together and get all the twin boys together again, but we'll see if that ever happens.
Oh my goodness. Aldo, first of all, I never knew that you had a twin. Second of all, I feel like I may have heard somewhere in my mind that you're from a military family, and I think you must meet up, the 4 of you, the twins. How cool would that be to meet up all these years later?
2 sets of twins meeting, it'd be so Shakespearean.
It would be. You could put on your own play.
There you go.
What drew you to the theater?
I was trying to get kissed.
Okay.
There hadn't been a lot of that. When I was in the 7th grade, we went and saw a production of Oklahoma, and there was a woman named Linda Peterson who was playing Ado Annie, and she was gorgeous and fabulous, and she was singing "I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No," and I thought, oh my gosh, that's the girl for me. And so I thought, wow, she's really kissing this guy, and I thought, oh, she has to, because she's in a play. And if a director told a girl they had to kiss me, she couldn't say no. So I auditioned for plays. And it took me a while. I didn't get my first stage kiss until I was a sophomore in college. And it was actually on the cheek. But by that time, I was too hooked to realize that I was being motivated by kisses.
Okay, so going back, I love this, motivated by a kiss. What was the show in college that you were the kiss on the cheek?
You Can't Take It With You.
Oh, so okay.
I played Ed, and instead of a printing press, I was doing desktop publishing. So when my wife came home, she gave me a kiss on the cheek. And when I was in Ashland, where we worked together, I was doing one of the park talks, and somebody asked me that question, And I said, and I got a kiss on the cheek. And then this woman said, "It was my daughter." Megan Schneider's mother from Texas was in the audience saying, "It was my daughter."
It's beautiful. The beautiful way that theater touches us all, really.
Touches us, she said.
Yes. Can you say what your first experience with Shakespeare was then?
In the 9th grade, we had a teacher named Mrs. Henderson who said we could write a paper after seeing Romeo and Juliet, or we could perform a scene. And we had seen the Zeffirelli, and it blew me away. Young Michael York running up and down the street. It was just, I so wanted to be Tibbleton.
Either thou or I or both must go with him.
And so it was just so cool to watch, and the sword fighting. So I was like, this is a piece of cake. I'll get all the other guys who are on the football team. We'll wear sweats. We'll get yardsticks, and we'll just say these lines that they're saying, and then we'll have a little sword fight. And Mrs. Henderson was so thrilled that all these football players were playing Romeo, Mercutio, and Tybalt, and Benvolio, and they were trying to do this scene, and I was so frustrated because when it was over, I knew we didn't sound anything like the people that were in that film. The words weren't coming out the way that they did there, and it was so frustrating. And she just kept, she was thrilled. She talked about it for years, but I just remember how frustrated I was by how far away from the mark I felt we had fallen. And later on, when I was in grad school, I was thinking, oh yeah, even then I knew that wasn't scanning. There was no flow to that poetry.
But first of all, how amazing and wonderful that you got your friends to do this with you. Did any of them catch the bug after? No. They football players. No.
Exactly. They were thrilled not to have to write that paper. But
I see. Right.
That was in all honesty, that's what initially enticed me. But even the good-looking guy that cast as Romeo, and he was like, yeah, whatever, as long as we don't have to write the paper. So
yes, so it was about not writing the paper. But for you were seriously interested in the language. So did you think about, I want to study this? Like, what happened then? Were you interested in exploring language? Did you go to your teacher and say, hey, talk to me about this?
Actually, no. Same thing happened in my senior year. We're doing Macbeth. We're doing the Scottish play. I'm not in a theater. So, and I did a monologue, If 'Twere Done When 'Tis Done. I did that monologue, I think, probably to avoid another paper or something. And it was better, but still not it. And then when I was a sophomore in college, I was in Hamlet. I played the ghost of Hamlet's father because as the ghost, the director took the only black guy who was in the play and had this kind of a shroud over his head and a sword in my hand, and so that you wouldn't see that that Hamlet's daddy is black and what's going on there. Even there in that audition, it was just, the language was so, and he said, now, you want to be careful with the language. It'll trip you up a little bit if you're not, so look it over. And I was auditioning with Polonius, and I said to Laertes, go. I couldn't figure, go to was not coming. I had no idea. And so by the time I got into grad school, a classical training program at SMU, I was saying to Peggy Freed, Margaret Loft, that this is not for me. This Shakespeare, it's not for me. there's a couple of black guys in the entire canon. There's some good stuff, but it's not for me. And somebody said, "Oh, there's also the Prince of Morocco. Take a look at that." And I was like, "So all right." So I take a look at Prince of Morocco, and before I see Morocco, I see Shylock, and I see him saying, "Hath not a Jew eyes, hands?" And I'm riveted, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's me." He's saying Jew, but here I am in Texas and feeling, hey, what about me? Aren't I human too? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? And I'm like, oh my God, he is talking about me. And I was just shook and saying, okay, I think this is talking to me. It is speaking to me. That monologue was everything in that moment. And then got a chance to be in, Merchant and play Prince of Morocco, and then watch Hal Holbrook do that, at the Old Globe Theater, and watch Hal Holbrook do that on a nightly basis, and was off to the races.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to this because you now teach, and there's a lot of discussion these days to what extent the works of William Shakespeare are useful to young people of color today. Is it relevant? What do you tell your students? Is Shakespeare relevant? What do you believe?
Absolutely. I think he touches the human condition. He gives voice to those feelings in ways that most writers are able to briefly in their careers, maybe a couple of times, but over and over and over, he's able to capture that essence of humanity in a way that can access the poetry and beauty of our life, even in its most profound, most despair moments. And he does it over and over for kings and queens, but paupers and peasants, for males and females, for children and elderly. He's able to over and over again say, to take a John of Gaunt, that moment where somebody in your life is getting older, and then they start doing all of the ancestry work, and this is where we came from. And you hear that in John of Gaunt saying, this realm, this England, and going to that line of ancestry and going, this is what we're connected to. Or Edward the Black had 7 sons, and I want to tell you about all of those sons, and bring all that down. From somebody who's older, as well as sometimes even the youngest character in the Scottish play sitting with his mother and saying, well, what about these questions about our state? And so, where is my father again? Why did he leave? Why? Well, then, if he loves us, why would he go away? Those questions that are just so very, very human. Maybe it's a bunch of different people, or it's one person, or whatever. But the consistency of excellence and the authenticity of the words is just it's really pretty amazing. Really pretty. And you're an actor. You want to say great words. And dude's got some great words to say.
Oh my God, Aldo, I love how you describe that. A, dude has some great words to say. And B, that he touches humanity. He has a way of consistently finding the human engine in all kinds of people.
All kinds of people.
So my question to you is, has the world changed over the course of your career in terms of diversity inclusion? Have you been able to play some of these roles that, when you say to me, oh, and they put a shroud over me, it breaks my heart. I go, oh my God. Ugh. Okay, so hopefully we've moved forward from that. Do you feel that?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about the change over the course of your career in diversity inclusion in Shakespeare and in theater as a whole.
I think, yes. I can remember in 1993, Jim Edmondson at Ashland did a production of Richard III with Marco Baricelli playing Richard, and Lewan Alexander played Buckingham. And there were these audiences that were had a little a tilt, going, and you get these questions, and people like, was the Duke of Buckingham historically, was he of African descent? And having somebody like Lewan say, no, he wasn't. And Richard III wasn't of Italian descent either, but you didn't ask that question. And where we were with, as a theater audience, as a country, as a society, with how much we could or couldn't suspend our disbelief if we saw somebody's gender was different, or if we saw the shade of someone's skin was, different. You can't have them be in the family. She's a redhead, and none of the others are redheads, so that she can't be the sister, and those sorts of things. And not just film. We're talking theater, where I hold up my index finger and my thumb and say it's a gun and shoot you. We're talking theater, and people were that opposed to race and gender issues. And I think we have come a long way. Though some, people have been pushing the envelope, and people have been playing Shakespeare. The African Grove Company was playing Shakespeare in the 19th century in New York. And then Ira Aldridge goes over to Europe to become a huge star, where it's not that his race was not noticed or insignificant, but it didn't have the same baggage that it does in the United States, because we still haven't dealt with all of our race issues. So there's been much progress in some ways. In other ways, we have gotten to the point to where the plays that are problematic, sometimes people aren't doing. Some interesting trends that Donald Trump gets elected, and everybody is running out to do Julius Caesar, or there's a lot of Scottish plays going on, a lot of Macbeth, those sorts of things about power that's not being used well and things like that. Not seeing a whole lot of Taming of the Shrew. What are we going to do about these plays that say women are supposed to be subservient? And that one in particular, what do you do with this strong woman who's literally someone is trying to confine her and to tame and control her power? For some people it's just easier not to do some of those. Merchant of Venice. When we did Merchant of Venice, Jack O'Brien said he wanted to talk to the local rabbi, and the rabbi said, "Sorry, I'm not available right now, but just leave a message about that, and we'll talk later, Jack. And also, I hope you're not doing that awful play."
Wow.
And Jack said, "Well, I'm going to tell you honestly, most of them are problem plays. There's only about 6 or 7 that are perfect and that are almost fail-safe. But they all have problems. They all have issues, because they all deal with humanity, and we're complex and problem-filled. So as we move into a realm where we identify triggers, and we can either say, this play might be triggering for these groups in these ways, or we say, you're going into a theater, and that could be triggering, period. Some people are saying, we want the audience, we need their support. Let's not offend anyone. And that is where I think some of us are right now, that tendency to just back off of and away from a lot of it.
What's your dream in terms of where it could or should head? What do you hope for the theater in terms of its journey with With Shakespeare, as you said, it's complicated and you can never simply boil it down to racism or sexism, but there is part of that in there. How do you acknowledge it and bring it forward? Is that possible? Do you believe it's possible? Or do you think we should not do some of these plays? What's your thought on that?
I say don't do the ones that aren't good. You don't have to do it because it's Shakespeare.
Uh-huh.
You should do it because it's good, because it's right for the moment, it's right for the time, it's right for the audience. And I think that those are some choices that people are making. I think that it is in the same way that you don't want to discriminate against anyone in a blanket way. Let's not do Shakespeare because he's a white man. Oh, he is a white man. I did notice that in that picture. No, let's not do that, but let's do it because it's great material. Again, that needs to be the litmus test. At the same time, I don't think we want to let Shakespeare suck up all the air in the room and take us away from these other writers and people still don't know Hannah Crowley and there's all sorts of other writers that from the period that might also need to be looked at, but from the world that, we are still so focused in Western ways that we sometimes neglect and overlook other possibilities and, a full palette. Then one of the things that we know about the theater is that it can bring us perspective. Uh-huh. So that opportunity can get missed. My hope is that theater gets supported more so like it was maybe in the 70s. There was considerable funding that we don't see the National Endowment of the Arts as an annoying beggar, but a pillar of what our society needs to move forward in an intelligent and cultured way, so that it gets really appropriate funding, so that people can find out that this work is life-changing, that this work is our ability to connect on a human level. It's how we exercise our ability to empathize with other human beings. And when we don't have that, when we become so isolated and we say, no, my tax dollar, give me that back. Don't spend it anywhere that I don't want it spent, and give me that. Then we die like misers that Moliere is making fun of. It's not a way. The Scrooge and the miser at the end of those plays are reaching out into the society that they've withdrawn from, in the same way that we need to do post-pandemic. And when most people got through the pandemic, they went inside and they turned on Netflix and they watched stories being told by actors. And we just need to do that live together as a community much more often. And when we do, when we walk in, I hope that theater can get back to a place where it lets audiences know that Edward Bond poem that says, "Leave the theater changed," that humor without purpose is cruel. That your thoughts should be reaffirmed or should be challenged, but you should leave changed. And if you haven't, then it hasn't been successful. And I think that when we inform audiences of that, and they are ready for that, and they walk in there, they're going to be changed. That's your trigger warning, and that's what you. But this is a necessary and appropriate challenging of the spirit that makes us better people.
Oh my Aldo, I love it so much. Let me see if I can just repeat it because I want to remember it. That theater allows us to exercise our empathy.
Yes. Yeah.
And the trigger warning at every theater is, you will be changed. I love it.
Yeah, the trigger warning is the word theater.
Right.
So,
Right.
At the very, very top of, maybe even before they take office, Mike Pence goes to see Hamilton.
Oh, right.
And the cast comes out, they take their bow, and they encourage him to use his power well.
Yes.
And the president-elect, I believe at that point, says that Pence was attacked, and that's not what's supposed to happen in the theater. You're supposed to go to the theater and feel safe. And I thought, you don't go to the theater.
That's right.
You think that, you don't go to the theater. You don't know what theater is about. Those statements, which were polite and honest and brave, moments like that, that's exactly what we're about. We usually we use the playwright's lines, but they say the same thing. Be bold, make choices that will benefit all of us, not a few of us.
That's all said so beautifully, Aldo, but I'm going to circle back around to some other playwrights because, of course, this is a Marcus Gardley translation, and you've worked with Marcus before. Can you talk to me about Marcus Gardley and why you love his words and what you think of his translation?
Yes. If you look at language and choices, you can see that Marcus is a love child of Shakespeare. Marcus is a love child of August Wilson. Marcus is probably a love child of Shakespeare and August Wilson. I think that
yes.
I can't remember what I was doing when I got a call from Cutting Ball Theater. Amy Mueller was working with Rob Melrose was the artistic director at the time, and they said, we're doing a Marcus Gardley play called Jesus Moonwalks the Mississippi. I'm not sure there's a better title ever. And I read the play, and who doesn't love Greek mythology? So there's that. But Demeter coming back as a man becoming Demeter to go find his child and reconnect with his child in this post-slave moment. And August says in his preface to Joe Turner that the slaves and the sons of and daughters of former slaves have gone down these roads in disparate directions, and they're trying to reconnect and get back. And I thought, oh, that's exactly what this is. Demeter looking for Persephone and wherever she can find them. And so this man then becomes a woman, and Aldo's 6'4" frame in a dress and a head wrap and a corset going in to find his daughter. It was thrilling. But I got to say, it's also challenging. There's a chorus of, there's some beautiful women, including Rebecca Frank was in that. So that were playing a chorus. They were the river. They were the Mississippi. When the play starts, my character is being lynched from a tree. And so to see the rope around my neck and the knots in the rope as it's going over the tree limb. I love the women who were playing the chorus, in that when we first started to go to rehearse that, they said they couldn't watch it, they couldn't look, they needed to focus elsewhere because it was too hard to watch, and set that level at that point and said, okay, this is where we're coming from. We're going to get to these beautiful moments. And to have a black Jesus, David Skillman playing Jesus, the mind of Marcus, the language of Marcus, and then his ability to storytell. And because this was a premiere, his ability to refine his language. He's a man who does rewrites to get it right. And it's just some beautiful work. So whenever I can, I try to get my hand into some Marcus, because that's also soul refreshing. And that line about empathy, it comes from artist director Bill English at the San Francisco Playhouse, who says that the theater is the empathy gym. Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King are empathy Olympiads.
Yes.
They are quite fit in their ability to empathize. But he said the rest of us, we need to go to the gym, and theater is our gym, so we get that worked out.
When you first met Marcus Gardley's words, you fell in love with them. You fell in love with him as a poet and an author. Okay. And then did you work on the Odyssey with him as well? Yes.
Yeah, which was fun because it was so different. We kept saying, this play is awesome, people need to, and we couldn't. And then finally, ERIC Ting rolls into town at Cal Shakes, and Eric is like, we were sitting in his office and we were talking. I look up on this board and he's got plays that he's considering. And I said, you know Black Odyssey? And he goes, oh yeah, I love Marcus. And he's got this energy, and he's like, I love Marcus. I want. I was doing something that was that season, but I said, if you do, let me know if you're going to do this. I really want to, and so got to be in that, which was just the cast, the music, Linda Tillery's music. Just her work with spirituals, and her work with some Motown stuff. And then she wrote a song in there that was just amazing. So kudos to ERIC Ting. Che Yu, I should also say, did it at Denver Center, but at that point it was focused on a New York landscape. And then Marcus, who was from Oakland, said, no, Oakland is Olympus. The gods live here.
I love that.
So he changed it, and he made it really, really specific. And people would lose their minds when their favorite restaurant was named, or when their favorite haberdashery got named. And they're like, that's why I buy my ties. And,
that's fantastic.
It was just so rich, and it was fabulous to be a part of that. I was really sad that the Oregon Shakespeare Festival was supposed to do it the first year of the pandemic, and they had to cancel when everything got canceled.
Can we talk a little bit about Marcus Gardley's translation of King Lear that we worked on? What did you think about the translation of Lear? Well, maybe first, what did you think about Louis Douthat's play on translation to begin with? And then what did you think about Marcus and King Lear?
The play on project is really interesting. I was, as a purist, was adamantly opposed to it. No, it's Shakespeare. Just leave it as is. We can rise to this occasion. We should blah blah blah. And then you go, Dr. Louis Douthat is in charge, and if you know Louis, you love Louis, you admire Louis, you adore Louis, and you trust Louis. I was like, what? They're doing what? And then Louis says, yeah, here's my board. Here are the people, and I'm lining up some people. At that point, she had maybe 3 or 4 of the canon with a director and then a dramaturg to work with. A writer and a dramaturg to work through each of the pieces. And I'm looking. I was like, oh, look who you got. Oh. And then Aldo, the purist, was like, "Hey Lou, have you thought about what about also? Have you talked about this?" And in that same quick change of opinion and direction that I had, I watched people do the same thing when they said, "No, you should never. No, no, you don't do that. You leave Shakespeare as it is. That's what should be done." And then they would say, of course, when we're in rehearsal, sometimes we have to change some of the words, and we have to do this. And you watch them do that same sort of a quick change and say there are some words that maybe you don't want to use. Going back to Macbeth, that when Macbeth gets the word about his children, he said, I think is it Ross that says, "Be not a niggard of thy speech," and with an adverb of niggardly, these words. you probably want to use a
different word.
Yeah, probably want to use a different word. Matter of fact, as you do this, you might want to use a trigger warning for your audience to say, because in some ways, the way that we say, I am not only aware of those words and sensitive to those words, I'm an ally with the people who might have those words used against them. And in order for me to perform my allyship, I have to wag my finger at you and say, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Children might hear that, and children will listen. And so we get back to that same conundrum about, yes, it's theater. Which of these words will we keep? Which will we choose? There are choices that have to be made, quite honestly, with our current attention span are so much shorter than the people who stood for 3 to 4 hours to see a play. I just did a midsummer that was an hour long. A 1 hour midsummer.
Wow.
And somebody said, all right, I know you cut some stuff, but I can't figure out what. So if we're going to alter the plays, maybe altering it for the access of more ears that make it accessible. And, Louis has always said the things that are most familiar, because they're the really famous speeches, mostly those get left alone anyway.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones we've heard. Those are the ones that are easier for us. We have some familiarity with. When Julius Caesar, when they talk about the snaffle, and what is that? Well, that's a bit for a horse, but nobody knows that. So why would you hold on to that word?
So tell me about what you thought when you first read Marcus's translation of Lear.
I was fired up. The music and Lear, the music and Shakespeare, the poetry, yes, that works. But also the idea of Lear and the music industry, this is where we get Empire from, the whole series, the Terrence Howard show. So the idea about jazz, I thought it was also great. The jazz has been, it comes up in Shakespeare adaptations in Twelfth Night. Ken Kellerhart had always talked about doing an Othello as a jazz thing, but here I thought it was great just musically to think about how you build to the wind's solo of jazz when you're out there in the moors, and what that the tormented identity is. I think there's just all sorts of possibilities with it. So I was pretty excited. But I have to tell you, Miriam, when they said the fool, I thought it was a mistake. I was like, really? Me?
So say why? Say why?
Because I'm 6'4", and 2.5 bills, and you. Yeah. I mean, the historically they believe that the fool was probably a double. The actor doubled as Cordelia, and the good, as we know from the dresser, the key to a successful Lear is get a light Cordelia, because Lear has to pick her up at the end, and so that wasn't going to happen. I said to Eric, it's like I'm like a fool and a half. Are you sure? Is this right? But then Marcus was saying that this fool, when you think about Shakespeare's fools, even York, that we never see, you get the image of this old wizened person who, to quote Marcus, has seen it all, has seen everything, and can identify those individuals and their behaviors, and know when they've gone awry, and can call it out in a way that's cryptic enough to where they get their message out there, and it might not land that very instant, but eventually it will. For me, I've always seen the fool's language as some of the hardest in any of the plays. And for me, the Shakespeare's Lear, that fool, it just twists me. There's some stuff that I still am not certain I absolutely 100% understand. And so there was some clarity that Marcus was able to bring, but still keep some of the biting language. The fool is able to spank Goneril and Cordelia verbally.
Goneril and Regan, yeah.
Cordelia gets no spanking. Goneril and Regan, he's able to say naughty, naughty without saying the words naughty, naughty. And to say, I know who you are, and you're doing a wrong thing, or you should be ashamed of the thing that you've done, without ever going that far and being that direct. It's a skill.
Humor with purpose, as you said earlier.
That's good. Look at you with all the listening going on.
Well, do you have any favorite lines or favorite moments as you were working on this in podcast form? Did you have any favorite lines or moments as we went through?
The ones that came out of the mouth of Keith David, those are my favorites. Oh, that dude, his pipes, his intellect, and I've been clocking him for a long time. Matter of fact, three times I saw he and Ruben Santiago Hudson, Michelle Shea, Stephen Anthony Jones, and Viola Davis do that Seven Guitars, and watched it as it went through different iterations to be able to be in this show. And when he said, "A bitter fool," like, oh, and so that's one of the lines that stuck in my head still is "a bitter fool," and I think he is a bit bitter because of the way he operates. He can't say, "Stop it, keep it all, die in your throne, and then let them sort things out." You're trying to avoid a problem, and you're going to make a problem that's going to have me literally left out in the cold with you. And so the bitter fool sees it happening, knows what's going to happen, and is absolutely right, and then dies out there somewhere along the way on the heath. He goes. I'm trying to use that a bit as a touchstone, particularly when I kept feeling like I was making things too light, too easy breezy. Trying to get back to that, hold on to bitter fool a little bit more, was helpful. And fortunately, because we had Keith's voice to help me get there.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what you feel now listening to it? We should say Lindsay Jones is the sound designer, and of course ERIC Ting directed it. Have you been able to listen, Aldo, to any of the episodes?
It's kind of remarkable how rich the soundscape is.
Yeah.
We have a job that relies on our imagination, but I didn't imagine that much depth, that much richness, that much tonal environment that sets the entire play, and so that you can, every time you hear the car door, every time you hear a footstep, an interior door, a crowd, all the other sounds, other people. It's just kind of remarkable to think, yes, and here we each were in our own private pandemic spaces trying to make this happen. And then somebody else with the technology made some more magic happen on top of it.
Yeah, I will say it's an extraordinary cast of actors in this particular Lear. It's just really extraordinary. Last question. The Fool speaks truth to power, right? So how important do you feel like that is in this world today? And who are our fools today? Is that a fair question? That might be harder to answer on this.
Our fools today are the same fools that we've had for years. People who can speak the truth, sometimes get a laugh while doing it, and that truth works its way into your brain. Mm-hmm. And so if we go again back to the last administration, and if you think about late night talk show host,
yes,
every single one of them had an imitation of Trump. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some of them said things that had they said it, at the gate of the White House with an AK-47 on them, there might have been different results than people just putting their hands together or laughing. Comedians often are the fools of society who are counted on to address those issues. But this Marcus's fool is, as a matter of fact, he sent me to Mom's Mabley, and so I looking at Mom's Mabley. But people who don't know Mom's Mabley may be thinking of George Carlin, kind of a Lenny Bruce, but he was he was so on the edge, almost rebel. That has that dry delivery that's going there. It's that's
who the fool is.
Yeah, I think it's closer to it.
And what do you hope people will take away from this podcast, from Marcus Gardley's translation in this podcast? What do you hope people will take away from it?
Infection. that they will get bit and go, wow, I gotta read how Shakespeare wrote it. I gotta take another one in. This was great while I was on the Peloton, but I want to sit down with one of these and read it. I want to jump onto the Peloton and I want to go through another and listen and read and then go see theater. I'm hoping they all get infected.
I love that. Get infected with the love of Shakespeare that you have, Aldo, that you absolutely have.
That's a good commercial. That's a good commercial.
It is. Aldo, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate your candor, your honesty, and your infectious love of Shakespeare, of Marcus Gardley, of August Wilson, and of the theater in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam.
You've been listening to the Play On Podcast bonus content series. You can learn more about the Play On Podcasts at Next Chapter Podcast's website, ncpodcasts.com. That's N as in next, C as in chapter podcasts, with an S at the end.com, where you can find other Play On Podcast series and interviews, along with talk podcasts like The 500, The 10, The Tough Juice Podcast with Karan Butler, and a whole lot more. I'd like to thank Jeremiah Tittle, the founder of Next Chapter Podcasts, and my producer, Peter Musto. Our audio engineer is Adam Bernard, and our editor and sound designer is Justin Cortez. Be sure to subscribe to Next Chapter Podcasts for updates on all the latest content, and don't forget to rate and review our shows. I'm Miriam Lauba, and I look forward to sharing more incredible works in the Play On podcast series with you, along with lots of enlightening bonus content at Next Chapter Podcasts.